This is a big one. The New York Times has recently exposed additional concealed evidence of corruption and weaponization of the Trump Justice Department, including a buried criminal probe into Donald Trump himself. Okay, folks, there is a lot here, so this video is going to come with a bit of a disclaimer. I don't script my videos. I try to make them as organic as possible and maintain as much eye contact with you, the viewer, as possible, so you can see my pretty green peepers. However, this particular story is so fact and data and information dense and covers like a time frame of 5 or 6 years, then I'm going to be glancing at notes quite a bit because I want to make sure I give you the correct information and that we do it concisely. And this doesn't become like an hour-long video, even though it probably very easily could. And as a matter of fact, you may very well see jump cuts in this video. I don't know yet. We'll see where it goes, but I may end up editing this to kind of shrink like an accordion the video for your viewing pleasure. So with all that in mind, let's jump in. So it has been reported by the New York Times, 3 investigative journalists associated with the New York Times, that some shenanigans were afoot during the Trump administration, surprise, surprise, specifically the Trump Justice Department, surprise, surprise, under the corrupt stewardship of Attorney General Bill Barr, surprise, surprise. And this story has so much factual predicate to it that I need to give some background, okay? So, Crossfire Hurricane was the name of an FBI investigation into Donald Trump when he was running for president in 2016. Okay, he was not yet president. It was investigating multiple inappropriate contacts between Russia, our foreign adversary looking to meddle in the 2016 election, and Donald Trump and Trump associates and members of the Trump campaign. So that investigation ran from late July 2016 until May 2017. Then that investigation was taken over by Robert Mueller. You remember Bob Mueller. He was appointed special counsel by an acting Trump attorney general. So this was after Trump won the election. The investigation continued. And he inherited that FBI investigation to continue looking into whether or not there were inappropriate contacts between the Russian government and Russian actors and people in Donald Trump's orbit. So that investigation under Robert Mueller went from 2017 until 2019, okay? At the end of the Mueller report, which was the final report that kind of summarized everything, there were 34 indictments, including 5 Trump associates who were either successfully convicted of felonies or pled guilty to felonies. Additionally, Robert Mueller identified 10 instances in which Donald Trump himself arguably obstructed justice by trying to impede or interfere or put pressure on the investigations into any connection between him and his associates in the Russian government. So the thing is, Robert Mueller declined to recommend charges. He declined to tell the Attorney General, Bill Barr, hey, you should charge Donald Trump for these 10 instances of obstruction of justice for various reasons. And the biggest one being that the Department of Justice has a standing policy to not charge a sitting president, okay? So Robert Mueller didn't recommend it. He just said, look, I found 10 instances where you could probably make the case that Trump tried to commit obstruction of justice. What you do with it is up to you. I'm just laying out the facts for you. And so, of course, because Bill Barr was Trump's hatchet man, was Trump's appointed attorney general, he declined to recommend charges against Donald Trump for these 10 instances. So that's the Mueller report. That's Crossfire Hurricane. But the story doesn't end there. Because, of course, Trump's pissed at all of this, and so is Bill Barr, and they tried to spin it every which way to say, hey, look, see, there's no evidence of collusion. There was no evidence that, Donald Trump was working with Russia. And indeed, that's true. There were like 170 inappropriate, unethical contacts between Russia and Russian actors and people associated with Trump, but there was no evidence, conclusive evidence, that Trump himself was deliberately working with Russia to steal the election from Hillary Clinton. Of course, that didn't have to be the case for, again, the relationship between Russia and Trump's campaign to be wildly inappropriate and unethical and anti-American. But Trump was looking for political payback because he tried to spin this as a witch hunt. So what did he do? He and Bill Barr got together and said, look, I bet this was politically motivated, this investigation into me and Russia. And I imagine that could be the predicate to its own investigation. Maybe we should investigate the investigators who investigated me. And so Bill Barr was like, that's a great idea. We should totally do that. So what did he do? he handpicked a conservative Republican U.S. attorney named John Durham to investigate the Russia investigation. So that's where our story really begins. The Durham investigation has continued since 2019, so it's going on damn near 4 years. It began under the Trump administration and has been allowed to continue under the Biden administration. That's very, very, very important. Joe Biden, even though he has the authority, and so does Merrick Garland as the Attorney General, to end this investigation, to fire John Durham, Joe Biden hasn't ordered Merrick Garland to do it, and Merrick Garland hasn't done it himself. This investigation was allowed to continue. And many people for years were saying that this is going to be the silver bullet. This is going to prove corrupt acts from either the Democratic Party, the FBI, the Justice Department, Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Party's boogeyman, that they acted corruptly to, essentially put pressure on Donald Trump, to bully Donald Trump, to unfairly target Donald Trump when he was both candidate and president. And the Durham investigation is winding down. He's writing his final report as we speak, and there have been no bombshells. And we're going to dive into it. But what is a bombshell is this new story from the New York Times. How Barr's quest to find flaws in the Russia inquiry unraveled. The review by John Durham at one point veered into a criminal investigation related to Donald Trump himself, even as it failed to find wrongdoing in the origins of the Russia inquiry. That's a bombshell, and the wrong kind that Barr and Trump and Durham were looking for. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but there's several things I want to go over with you and highlight in particular, and some of it's right here. So I guess we should start with the big one. So the criminal inquiry into Donald Trump. Okay, so essentially, Bill Barr and John Durham, not only were looking into this domestically, but they were also leaning on the intelligence apparatus of our allies, people like in the United Kingdom or Italy. And, when they were doing this investigation, it turns out Italy said, look, we don't have anything for you about the Russian investigation, but we do have a credible tip that Donald Trump might be guilty of financial crimes, right? We can't help you with the Russia thing, which is what you're after, but we can give you a tip since, you're involved with the Department of Justice, and Bill Barr, you're the Attorney General, that there were suspicious financial dealings that Trump might be involved with. So we'll look into that in particular right now. So, an awkward tip. On one of Mr. Barr and Mr. Durham's trip to Europe, according to people familiar with the matter, Italian officials, while denying any role in setting off the Russia investigation, unexpectedly offered a potentially explosive tip linking Donald Trump to certain suspected financial crimes. This is big. Mr. Barr and Mr. Durham decided that the tip was too serious and too credible to ignore. So, again, a political appointee and the guy he appointed, who probably have a vested interest in making sure that Trump isn't found guilty of anything or tarred or diminished in any way, say that this tip was so serious and so credible, even they couldn't ignore it. But rather than assign it to another prosecutor, which is what they should have done, because Durham, as special counsel, was supposed to be just investigating the Russia investigation, that was his limited jurisdiction, Barr says, look, this is too serious to ignore, but I can't give it to anybody else. So I'm going to give it to you, even though it has nothing to do with what you're looking into. So Mr. Barr had Mr. Durham investigate the matter himself, giving him criminal prosecution powers for the first time, even though any possible wrongdoing by Trump did not fall squarely within Durham's assignment to scrutinize the origins of the Russia inquiry. Mr. Durham never filed charges against Trump, and it remains unclear what level of investigation it was, what steps he took, and what he learned, and whether anyone at the White House ever found out. The extraordinary fact that Mr. Durham opened a criminal investigation into a sitting president, his boss's boss, has remained secret, okay? But here's where it gets interesting. It was reported in October 2019, rumors that leaked to the New York Times and CNN and Fox and MSNBC, that part of Durham's administrative review of the Russia inquiry had involved a criminal investigation, right? So media outlets did hear eventually in 2019, like, wait a minute, there was a criminal inquiry that was opened during Durham's investigation. But the assumption was that it was related to the Russia investigation. The implication was very clearly that, oh my God, Durham has found some criminal activity either during the FBI investigation into Trump or during Mueller's investigation into Trump, somebody investigating the Trump-Russia relationship must have committed a crime, or at least Durham believed. But it turns out that wasn't the case, even though that was the rumor that was spread, even though that was the interpretation that was allowed to continue by Durham and the Trump Justice Department. They knew that the criminal investigation that Durham was looking at, the criminal inquiry, had nothing to do with Russia, had nothing to do with Bob Mueller, had nothing to do with the FBI. It had to do with Trump himself. It was a criminal inquiry into Trump. But they never corrected the record. They never clarified, hey, look, guys, no, they never sought to correct the record. They were allowed these things to continue, these rumors and these implications, because it benefited them politically. So that's the key to the bombshell thing right here, right? Right now you have congressional Republicans talking a big game about the weaponization of the Biden Justice Department under Merrick Garland. But here we have evidence that there was actually a formal criminal inquiry into the sitting president, Donald Trump. And not only was it not handled properly in the sense that it wasn't handed off to another prosecutor to look at independently, it was just dumped on this other guy who had a political motivation to not find anything, right? Even though what he was investigating had nothing to do with it. And the reason I say that he had a political motivation is because when you go back into this report, it discusses how the relationship between John Durham and Bill Barr became what we would consider wildly inappropriate in terms of the independence that a special counsel is supposed to have from the attorney general, who in turn is supposed to have some degree of independence from the sitting president. It talks about how Durham would actually go into Bill Barr's office for weekly updates and consultations about his day-to-day work, and that they also dined and sipped scotch together. But Merrick Garland isn't doing that with Jack Smith, who's investigating Donald Trump for January 6th and Mar-a-Lago. He's not doing that with Robert Hur, who's investigating the Biden classified documents scandal. There's supposed to be a degree of independence and separation. You're supposed to be out here staying away from me and just reporting back your findings periodically, not having, weekly updates. And this isn't a collaboration. This is, I'm empowering you to do an independent investigation that I think that I shouldn't be handling myself. I'm giving you the mandate, I'm giving you the tools, and then you stay away and do your thing, and then you come back to me when you need something or when I need to occasionally review and make sure that we're on the same page. But this indicates an intimate relationship between a special counsel and Bill Barr, the Attorney General. Wildly inappropriate. Republicans would never accept that if Merrick Garland were doing that with any of his special counsel. Can you imagine the scandal that would be associated? But here, apparently, it happened all the time. And beyond that, there's even more than that. So John Durham got to pick his own team as special counsel, as many special counsels do, right? He got to pick his own team. There were prosecutors on his team, people that he picked himself, who resigned in protest over how he was handling the investigation. So we'll start with, her name is Nora Donahue, who worked with Durham in the past and was brought back into the Justice Department. She was actually not even working for the Justice Department until Durham got this assignment from Bill Barr. And then he asked her to come back and work for him as his second in command. So there was a previously unexplained resignation in 2020 of his number 2 and longtime aide, Nora Donahue. And we didn't know why. It wasn't reported. Nobody ever said anything. She never issued a statement. She just abruptly resigned, which was seen as very strange given their close relationship, the fact that she was his handpicked number 2. So apparently, the reason that happened was because she had strenuous objections over the legal investigation or the legal ethics concerned with the investigation. Mr. Durham's deputy, Ms. Donahue, a longtime close colleague, increasingly argued with him in front of other prosecutors and FBI agents about legal ethics. She had an independent standing as a respected prosecutor, and again, he brought her back, Durham did, to help him oversee this investigation. Now, Ms. Donahue complained to Mr. Durham about how Bill Barr kept hinting darkly in public about the direction of their investigation. In April 2022, for example, he suggested to Fox News that certain officials could be prosecuted, saying that the evidence shows that we were not dealing with just mistakes or sloppiness. There's something far more troubling here. Ms. Donahue says, hey, John, you need to tell Bill Barr to basically, he's violating Justice Department policy by commenting about an ongoing investigation. That's unacceptable. We would never accept that from a Democratic attorney general. He shouldn't be doing it either, so you should say something to him. But Mr. Durham proved unwilling to challenge Bill Barr. The strains grew when Mr. Durham used grand jury powers to go after a private citizen's emails. Ms. Donahue opposed that tactic and told colleagues that Mr. Durham had taken the step without telling her, so he didn't even consult her, his number two. By summer 2020, with Election Day approaching, Bill Barr pressed John Durham to draft a potential interim report centered on the Clinton campaign and FBI gullibility or willful blindness, because once the Durham investigation found no evidence that the Russian investigation was improper or corrupt, so they switched their target. They were like, okay, maybe the FBI and Bob Mueller did their part, but maybe the Clinton campaign, maybe Hillary Clinton was involved in trying to corruptly influence the investigation. So Bill Barr says, hey, look, I know you don't have the facts to support that yet, but the election day is right around the corner, so maybe you could draft a letter just, discussing these things. So Nora Donahue discovered that. She discovered that other members of the team had written a draft report that Mr. Durham had not told her about, according to people briefed on their ensuing argument. She erupted, according to people familiar with the matter. She told John Durham that no report should be issued before the investigation was complete, and especially not before an election, and denounced the draft for taking disputed information at face value. She sent colleagues a memo detailing these concerns and resigned. Okay? But that's not it either. There were additional resignations. So, late in summer 2021, John Durham prepared to indict Michael Sussman, a cybersecurity lawyer who'd represented Democrats in their dealings with the FBI about Russia's hacking of their emails. Because again, Russia hacked the DNC emails as well. So that was part of Russia's attempts to interfere in the 2016 election and influence it for Donald Trump, even if Trump wasn't working with them directly. The Russian government wanted him to win. So two prosecutors, two more people on John Durham's special counsel team, objected, according to people familiar with the matter, because they said that Durham didn't have a basis to make a persuasive, compelling case to indict this guy, that it was politically motivated. It had the thinnest case possible. You shouldn't go after him. 5 years earlier, Mr. Sussman had relayed a tip to the FBI about odd internet data that a group of data scientists contended could reflect hidden communications between the Trump Organization and the Alpha Bank of Russia. The FBI, which had already been investigating Donald Trump's ties to Russia, briefly looked at the allegation, but dismissed it. So they looked at it because it was a tip. They're like, we're already looking into this, and we don't find much here based on this tip, so we're moving on. John Durham accused Sussman of lying to the FBI by saying he was not conveying the tip for a client, right? His client, of course, being the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton. So the two prosecutors, Scarpelli and Patel, argued that this could not be a compelling case. You can't charge this guy. You can't accuse him of lying. You won't be able to make a successful case in court that he lied and that this was politically motivated. So don't do this. Such a case would not normally be prosecuted, they said. But he didn't change course. He was going to prosecute him anyway. He was going to indict him. And so these two that, again, Durham picked, quit. Just like Donahue did, over how he was choosing to handle this investigation. And by the way, Durham would go on to to indict Michael Sussman, and it ended in an exoneration. John Durham, the two times he went after people in court over this investigation, he lost, and this was one of them. So he should have listened to the two people on his team who retired. But basically, this report is insane, guys. I mean, we could go on for like 45 minutes or an hour over it, but the bottom line is this. You're going to hear, and you have heard, and other videos have discussed on this channel, how the Republican Party is making these wide accusations of, Merrick Garland being, just this asymmetrical political hatchet man for Joe Biden. And, the Department of Justice under Biden has been so weaponized, so corrupt. And whatever you want to say about the Biden Justice Department, and no Justice Department is perfect by any stretch, there's nothing in comparison to all the crap that went on in the Trump administration under people like Bill Barr. And this is yet another thing to add to the pile. We have evidence that an actual criminal probe, a formal criminal inquiry, was opened into a sitting president, and we never knew about it. We never knew. Maybe there was something there, maybe not. But imagine how Republicans would be reacting right now if some of the names in this report were changed. Imagine it was Merrick Garland instead of Bill Barr. Imagine it was Jack Smith instead of John Durham. Imagine it was Joe Biden instead of Donald Trump. Imagine you just switch the names and the political affiliations, keep all the facts the same, but change the names. What would they be saying now? They'd be rioting in the streets. They'd be saying, oh my God, we got to investigate this. We're opening up a House oversight and judicial investigation into these allegations. This is too corrupt. How dare the FBI open a criminal probe into a sitting president and then not tell us? But of course they don't care, because it was Donald Trump, a Republican, and it was two other Republicans, Bill Barr and John Durham, involved. And so they don't care. They don't care about all the inappropriate ties between, Barr and Durham, how there was political motivation, how Barr was commenting on ongoing investigations, how Durham was seeking indictments that even his own hand-picked staff were saying, dude, you do not have a case here. What the hell are you doing? This seems politically motivated. They don't care about this. And maybe the American people won't either, because Trump's not in office anymore, but you should. You should. As a matter of fact, I hope now that this story broke that Senate Democrats, because of course we don't have the majority in the House anymore, but we still have the majority in the Senate. I hope that the Senate Judiciary Committee, I hope they open investigations into this. I hope that Attorney General Garland opens an investigation into this as well. Hell, the thing is that the Democrats have to stop playing by asymmetrical standards, right? Standards and traditions that are only upheld by one party are not standards and traditions. They have to be reciprocal. They have to be observed by people, right? It's like we talk about good faith conversations. If you and I are having a conversation and you're behaving in good faith and I'm behaving in bad faith, by definition, we're having a bad faith conversation because it requires both of us, right? Republicans are not acting in good faith. And this is nothing new. Like, this is a bombshell, but this is really, in terms of the sort of information we know about the type of corrupt behavior, this isn't surprising. And so we can't sanitize it. We can't sweep it under the rug and go, oh, boys will be boys, Republicans will be Republicans. No. Garland should look into this. He should assign a third special counsel into this. Like, hey, we're going to look into this. I'd be cool if he fired Durham at this point, because that's the other thing. Barr made Durham a special counsel, even though he wasn't initially. Durham was initially just a prosecutor assigned to look into this, but then eventually Bill Barr made him a special counsel, which gave him a degree of independence, right? Now, Biden could have stepped in when he became president, or Biden's attorney general more accurately, and fired the special counsel, but it would have there would have been political implications, right? I say to hell with it now. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like at the end of the day, Democrats have to stop observing this asymmetry, and we should. There should be Senate investigations into this. Senate Democrats should be playing this exactly the way that House Republicans are playing it with Biden. The only difference is that Senate Democrats will actually have a factual predicate, a basis, a persuasive basis of a long-standing tradition of corruption in the Trump Justice Department. That's how I feel about it. Maybe you feel differently. Leave me a comment either way, but this is crazy, and I'm hoping that that the Biden Justice Department and congressional Democrats in the Senate and in the House take this very seriously, because this should be all over the news. Hey you! Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, and I hope that you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you absolutely hated the video, the best revenge for you is also to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. That'll teach me. If you want to share an opinion or share some feedback, go ahead and leave a comment, all right? 2023 is a year of change, hence the aggressive rebrand and commitment to new content. Inspired by my friends Luke Beasley and STV Philly, my personal goal for this channel is to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm hoping you'll do me a solid by spreading the word and the videos to potential fans and hate watchers alike. And in the meantime, we'll be pondering politics again with you very soon.